Whoa. Hi. Okay, so bittersweet news. This is going to be the very last video that I ever make in 2018. So, the topic, this is Ned's second abduction account. If you'd like to watch the first abduction account, I'll put a link to that in the description as well as the end screen to this video. You don't really have to watch the first one to really get the scope of what's going on, but if you want to watch it in order, there you go. So yeah, okay, here goes. I was living in another part of the country when the abduction started, a little village called Distington in West Cumbria. Just a small village, but a very rough place nonetheless. Some of these early abductions were in Distington, and some when I moved back to Carlisle. When extraterrestrials single you out for long-term reoccurring abductions, they seem to take a particular interest when you move. I've no idea why. But not long after I move, they take another interest in me. I think they can't understand why you would want to move, and what the point of it is. I also actually remember one asking me why I was moving, but I can't remember which abduction it was from. As I've said, it was a long time ago. One thing I definitely remember happening after my initial abduction was encountering a small gray in our house in Distington. That was actually the first time I ever came across one of the small gray aliens. I woke up in the middle of the night needing to use the bathroom, and in that house you had to go downstairs through the living room and through the kitchen to the toilet. A pain in the ass, but what can you do? Anyway, back to the night in question. The encounter occurred as I deliriously fumbled through the annoyingly inconvenient path to answer nature's call. Suddenly, right there before me was standing a small, dark, gray-looking creature no more than 3 feet tall. It was standing there with a bowed head, hands together in front of it like a scolded schoolboy. I was so shocked I recoiled back, not having a clue what the hell it was or what it was doing there. You have to remember I live in a very rural part of the country. Things like this don't happen to people like me in places like here. I must have passed out at that point because that's the last thing I remember about this particular encounter. As to whatever it did to me or wherever it took me after I passed out, I truly have no idea, as when I woke back up, I was back in bed. Please bear with me on this next one, as I believe my next encounter was with an alien, but not one of the Greys. Sometime after that, days, weeks, can't quite remember, but my wife and I had gone to bed a little earlier than usual one night. My son, now 29, was just a toddler at the time and thankfully was also asleep in another room. It was about 9:30 p.m. or so. Neither of us were feeling particularly amorous, so we were just lying there talking to each other for about a half an hour. My wife started to yawn. I said, "I'm going to roll around, do you mind?" I smiled and said, "No, I don't mind." The bed was situated such that her side of the bed was against the wall. I then rolled over facing the empty room, and now back to back with her. Having pulled the covers over my head, I got in my usual sleeping position. I've always slept like a hamster, you know, fetal position, tightly curled into a little ball. After spending the next 10 minutes in my usual hamster-like position, I was still wide awake and beginning to get a bit bored, truth be told. Frustrated, and partially because I was running out of air underneath the sheets, I decided to stick my face out the side of the bed for a relieving breath of fresh air. To my utter shock and horror, no more than about 6 inches away from my face was another face staring intently back at me. It was a blonde-haired woman dressed in gray, crouching motionless before me. Eerily silent, her hands on her knees to make herself comfortable, I presume, she just continued peering through the covers at me. As if honing into my very essence, her stoic eyes locked onto mine with a piercing gaze. For a moment I thought it was my wife, but just as I was about to ask her what the heck she was doing, my blood flash froze in a terrifying moment of clarity. She was still laying there with her back to me. Then the reality of the situation hit me. Seeing and realizing there was a complete stranger in my bedroom, a surge of adrenaline launched me to my feet. I honestly thought we were being robbed, or perhaps about to be murdered in our own bed. I shot up shouting, and surprisingly, the woman jumped as much as I did. She stood back up, but not even my massive adrenaline rush could prepare me for what happened next. In a flash, she floated up and through the roof. By this time, my wife woke up and was asking me what the matter was. I remember pointing up at the ceiling and shouting, "There, can you see it?" She just went through there. My wife totally missed it. I was shocked, and my wife seemed equally shocked by me. So we did what all English people would have done in that situation, i.e., go downstairs and have a nice cup of tea. At this point in time, I honestly thought it was a ghost, even though it was as solid and real as my wife beside me. I didn't even believe in ghosts. Fast forward to about 2 weeks later. I had all but forgotten about the unusual experience. Once again, we went to bed. It was all as usual until I awoke in the middle of the night. The covers were up, and I was tightly tucked into my usual sleeping position. I looked up, and to my utter shock, there knelt the same late 20s to early 30s looking blonde woman once again. This time she was on her knees kneeling over my wife, staring at her as she slept. Once again, no more than 6 to 8 inches away from her head. I jumped up so hard I literally landed on the edge of the bed. For some reason, it was as if she hadn't noticed me at all. She was so intent at doing whatever she was doing, staring at my wife. I decided to take a different approach with our strange intruder this time. I put my hand on her shoulder and said, "Hello, what's your name?" Visibly spooked by this friendly question, she jumped up and with both hands shoved me backwards. And I don't mind telling you, it was with some force. When I got back up, she had gone. This was the last time I remember seeing this lady. As I told my wife what happened the next morning, my wife and I still thought it was a ghost. A lot of weird things had happened to us both in that house over the previous month. A few weeks later, while watching the news, a segment at the end caught my eye. Often at the end of a news broadcast, they'll put up something different or something they consider humorous. This segment definitely fell into that category. Though many don't take such segments very seriously, British law forbids the media from just making stories up, and they've got to be factually correct. So back to the news story. The newsreader said, and I quote, "And on a last note, hundreds of people around the world have been phoning authorities about being abducted by Pamela Anderson lookalikes." For a moment I snickered, then it occurred to me the two experiences I had just a few weeks earlier were pretty much the same. I now wonder if she was a Nordic blonde, searching through our minds to see what had happened to us when we were taken by the Greys. That's now what I honestly believe, but once again I could be wrong. All the best, Ned. I really wanted to have this video up before Christmas, but life kind of happened, so it's a little late to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, Festivus, or whatever the heck else people are celebrating these days. But I can wish you a Happy New Year. Happy 2019, everybody. I have a lot of awesome stuff planned for the channel in 2019, so you'll just have to stay tuned. Yeah, 2019 is going to be an awesome year, and I am rambling now, so see you next year. Ciao. Hey everyone, Drew here from Mad Cat Mysteries, and I hope you enjoyed the video you just watched. If you did, you can click on the subscribe button below. I'd appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.